Everybody, and welcome to Facebook Live, and hello to everybody who watches this on replay as well over on YouTube. I know people watch it on YouTube as well. So we're going to talk about boundaries this week, healthy boundaries, and 5 common boundary types that everybody needs. And what I'd like you to do is, as you're listening to me talking, it might be a bit long this week, and I apologise in advance. But remember, you can watch it again on replay, and you can go to the blog to get all the questions I'm going to call out. So when I'm talking about these boundaries, I want you to think about some, think about the types of boundaries I'm talking about, and then ask yourself some questions. Which of these boundaries are you better at putting in place? Are you better at putting in place healthy boundaries at work or at home, or are they both skewed? Are there specific people, sometimes it is people, or an event, something that happens, or things that trigger you? And then you drop the healthy boundaries. So it mightn't be the fact that that particular person just reminds you of somebody in the past, and then therefore they're triggering you to drop the healthy boundary like you would have done in the past. So sometimes we get caught out like that because the situation is not exactly the same. So try to identify which common boundary types that are an issue for you, which ones are better for you, and what maybe is the triggers around that particular boundary that you have. So let's get talking about them. As I said, there's 5 of them, so it will take me a little while to actually go through them. And I have some questions for each of them, just to maybe highlight to you what issues there might be in that boundary. But the questions I'm asking you are not all inclusive. You might be able to come up with your own questions, or it might trigger, the questions I'm asking might trigger you to investigate more. So the first one is your emotional and psychological boundaries. So are you feeling you have to, and that's a have to, everybody comes up with that have to, should have, should have to do something, take care of others' feelings? So are you taking on responsibilities for how others feel? Do you feel invalidated or criticised with somebody, or in a particular situation, work or at home, or with a particular person? Do you overshare personal information without getting to know somebody first? So, you meet them and then you're suddenly, emotionally vomiting all over people, which is not good. You may, those questions there might give you an indication that you have an issue with emotional and psychological boundaries. Now, I'm not going to go into domestic violence, because domestic violence will cover infringements on all of the boundaries I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so if you're in a domestic violence situation, the perpetrator, will usually infringe on every boundary I'm going to talk about today. Or if you're in a toxic work environment, they will usually infringe on all or some of these boundaries. So you've got to think about what's happening for me in my particular situation, and if it's in either case, toxic work environment or domestic violence situation, safety first. Okay, think about safety first. So few pointers to remind you about this particular boundary is that you have a right to own your own feelings and thoughts. In my book, The Building Blocks of Self-Care, I actually go through a list of a whole load of rights that we have as human beings. And so if you wanted to get a list of those, check out that workbook. You might be interested in working with that workbook. And I'm happy to answer questions, by the way, if you have bought the books or the workbooks. I'm happy to answer questions on all of them. So, we also have the right to express ourselves, our thoughts, our ideas, without, and that's the big one, without being dismissed, invalidated, or criticised. So if somebody is poo-pooing you and putting you down constantly and criticising every time you open your mouth, they are violating your boundaries. Okay? You have a right as well to differentiate between what you think and feel and what others feel and think. Okay, sometimes we have a hard time ourselves even, putting that boundary there between what we think and feel and what somebody else is thinking and feeling. We have a right to, like, no, that's not how I'm thinking, that's not how I'm feeling. And sometimes we can have issues with that. And if that's the case, I would advise you to talk to a therapist, because they will very quickly be able to re-establish that boundary with you. You also have to recognize with this one that you own your own thoughts and feelings. They're yours. Nobody can make you think a certain way or feel a certain way. Yes, I know there'll be people there, but if I'm in a relationship with a narcissist, or if I'm in a relationship with, domestic violence relationship, yes, people will say, like, I'm so ground down by these people that I don't know how I think and feel. In that case, this is where a therapist can help you. But again, safety first with those kind of situations. But in general, if you're not in those kind of situations, in general, you have a right to own your own thoughts and feelings. You have to recognize that they are mine, and therefore they are my responsibilities. My feelings are my responsibility. How I'm feeling is my responsibility. It's not on anybody else. It's not the responsibility of somebody else to make you happy or uplift you if you're feeling down. Only you can do that. And also the case, the reverse is true. We are not responsible for how others feel or think. That's on them, and we should respect it. As much as we want them to respect our thoughts and feelings, we have to respect them in return. It's our own healthy boundaries that can keep us accountable for our emotional and psychological well-being. This boundary. So you have to think about it in those terms. Boundary number 2, physical boundaries. So, physical boundaries, okay? Whether somebody's encroaching on your space, maybe you're encroaching on their space, but you're able to hold that boundary. Or also, they're respecting your right to privacy and that. So, are you feeling uncomfortable around somebody? That's a big red flag. You should be investigating that further. Do you feel somebody is invading your personal space? Again, that person has issues with boundaries, so that's a red flag. I'd be investigating that more. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you sticking to your working hours? Are you taking your lunch break? And there are other things. We don't think of those when we think about physical boundaries, but this is to do with our physical health as well. So if we're overworking, if we're not taking our breaks, if we're not getting enough sleep, I know people with young children are going to be going, how the hell can I get enough sleep? I can't. I'm not talking about those, okay? We've all been there. If you've had kids, you know how tough it is, particularly if they're teething the first few months. And, if they're if they're sick or something, yes, you're not going to get enough sleep, okay? So we're talking about normal time, outside that time. You're not getting enough sleep, so therefore you may have issues with physical boundaries. So the physical boundaries are there to help us with our body and our personal space, and they can include your right to privacy, as I said, how we define personal space. Some people need a bit more room around them. Some people don't mind you being a bit closer, but some people do. It's also about touch. Physical touch. What do you find acceptable? In different situations. If you met a complete stranger, some people are huggers, but you mightn't like that. You might go, no, I don't hug. I don't know you. But some people, they hug everybody. So you need to be able to say, sorry, no, I don't. I'll shake your hand instead. You need to be able to do that. You need to feel comfortable enough in yourself to be able to do that. But it's also about meeting your basic needs, shelter, sleep, and food. It comes under this category of physical boundaries. So are you meeting those basic needs? The next one is financial and possessions. So it's boundaries around our finances, boundaries around our things that we own. So are you loaning money to people will never pay you back? Okay, a family member that's always borrowing from you, but they never pay it back. Are you overspending and living beyond your means? You know you're doing it, so you got to stop and say, why am I doing it? And that's a hard one sometimes. I'm not talking about somebody who is really living paycheck to paycheck, is really struggling, okay, with finances. In Ireland, if you are in Ireland, I would direct you to MABS if that's the case. They're a wonderful organisation and they will help you with your finances. That's in Ireland, but you can look for an organisation similar wherever you are. Even hearing somebody say to you, look, you just don't have the money. This is where, this is what we can see, and their financial advisors, they can say, and it's a free service, by the way. You know, they can show you, even hearing somebody else saying, yeah, this, you are right, this is all you have, and you are living paycheck to paycheck. So there is help out there. Don't do this alone, okay? But other than that, if you are overspending and you are, why are you overspending? Why are you overspending? Do you allow family or friends to borrow items without returning them? Or just need a lend of the lawnmower and they never give it back? Or even a hammer, something simple as a hammer, and they never give it back. Or the printer or something in the house that you had. Do you constantly work overtime without getting paid? Or properly paid? If you're working overtime but they don't properly pay you, that's infringing on your financial boundary. So if you have issues around these things I've just talked about, you could have problems around financial and possession boundaries. So think about why that is, where the issue is exactly, what the problem is. Because these boundaries, this financial and possession boundaries, they protect our financial and material possessions. And that means we're entitled to certain things. We have certain rights under the law in terms of work. We have, we have rights to our own money, our own possessions. We have to remember here, we do not have to, again, that word coming in there, have to, hand over our money or our control of our assets to someone else. That's a very clear boundary infringement that a toxic person would do, particularly in a domestic violence situation. You get to choose how you spend your money, on what, and who you loan it to or not loan it to. You have a right to get paid, and in Ireland anyway, under the law, there are certain conditions that you get paid once you go above your normal working week, 39 hours. Then you have rights. You have rights to overtime, time and a half, or double time. So you should check your contract. But you also have responsibilities too around money and your own possessions. You have to pay your bills and your taxes, and stay within your budget. You have to, take care of your home if you have one, or if you're renting somewhere, you have a responsibility to take care of it too. Treat it with respect. Your car, same thing, look after it, get it serviced, checked regularly and things like that. And any other possessions you might have, if you've earned the money and, you're not going to just throw them away and treat them with disrespect. If you are, you've got to ask yourself, why am I doing that? Why do I not place value on these things? The other thing too is, we have to respect other people's financial and possession boundaries as well. We have to do that in return. If we're expecting it from somebody else, then we have to do it in return. So number 4, it's about time. Time boundaries. So, are you always at the beck and call of others, no matter what? It doesn't mean, it could be in work, or it could be family, friends, or your neighbours, or whoever in your life. Do you find yourself overworking? Again, this overworking, it's an overlap here on this one, where you're working a lot, overworking a lot. Do you agree to do things for other people, even though they're capable of doing it for themselves? Or do you allow others to waste your time? So again, this is a time boundary. that we can have. And remember, time is a very precious commodity. It is a commodity. And there are only 24 hours in the day, and we all only get 24 hours. You can't stretch it out, make it longer. No matter how much you try, this is all you get. And, so if you've got issues here, it can be, we can have negative beliefs, core beliefs about time and how we spend time and where we spend time. But, time boundaries are actually there to help protect us, not just with our time, but also our physical health and our mental health. So, of course, we have obligations. We all have obligations, maybe to work, if you are working with family, with friends, meeting up with them to a degree. Number one obligation you have is to yourself. If you find yourself taking work home with you, or you're working longer and longer hours, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's this for? And sometimes the answer can be, if I do it now, I'll get a promotion or I'll get a pay rise, and that can be okay if it's in a short term, if it's for the short term. But if it's a constant thing in your life, then that's negative. Okay. If you find yourself allowing people to use up your time, or you're doing things for them. Again, is it for a short period of time so you'll get something better at the end? Or, it's not. You have to again ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I giving so much time to other people? And maybe that's taking you away from your family. Maybe it's taking you away from personal time so you can look after yourself physically and mentally. You have to ask yourself these questions as to why around time. And the last one is number 5, and this is about relationships and sexual boundaries. So do you find your partner, your family, your friends don't respect you in your relationships? Is your partner or family or friends lying to you or being dishonest with you? Is your right to consent, we're talking about sexual consent here, is it being ignored when it comes to sex? Even if you're in a relationship, if you're in a partnership or marriage, you have the right to say no, okay, when it comes to sex. Do you find you have trouble with intimacy? Do you have communication issues? Again, in your relationships with your partner, your husband or wife, your family members, your friends, your work colleagues, your manager, your boss, co-workers, whatever you have there. If you're saying, yes, I have issues here with these, then you have an issue with your relationship boundaries and sexual boundaries if it comes to sexual intimacy with your partner or whoever you're having sex with. So, you've got to think about this, because all relationships, it doesn't matter whether it's an intimate relationship or not, all relationships, particularly those closer to you, should be based on mutual respect, trust, and honesty. And if they're not there, then the relationship isn't working. It's certainly not a healthy relationship. Good relationships will include, communication skills, how you communicate, how you resolve issues, being able to take time alone, how, what you share with other people, your rights to share or not to share, even if it is a very close person in your life. In an intimate relationship, the sexuality boundaries come in there as well. You have the right to say no, because these kind of boundaries help protect us around intimacy and sexual consent. So we have to have, those sexual boundaries in place too. So that's basically it. If you need help or you think there's an issue here for you with putting healthy boundaries in place, then I would suggest you reach out to a local therapist. The other one I would suggest you say, and This one can be a difficult one for us to look at. If we're being very honest with ourselves, we would look at this question and we'd say, are we the one violating somebody else's boundaries in any of those 5 areas I've just talked about? And that one can be a hard one too. But it's not the end of the world if you are. If you can admit to yourself, yes, it's me, I have an issue with this, or I don't have good communication skills, or, whatever it is, then you can do something about it. Again, your own local therapist will be able to help you with this very, very quickly. It'll take some patience and practice on your part, but you will get there if you're willing to practice putting these in. Boundaries are something we can learn to put in place, even no matter how old we are. We can learn them again, and we can hold the boundaries. And sometimes we can swing to one side. I've said this before with boundaries, we can swing to the no, because we're trying to enforce the boundary with, difficult people. And with difficult people, sometimes you have to keep saying no, over and over again to get them to go, yeah, I get the message. Or people are just so used to you saying yes all the time that they what? You're saying no? How could you? So they'll keep coming back at you. So sometimes we do have to swing to the other side of the pendulum, and hold that boundary for a little while, and then we'll get the happy medium in the middle where we're able to hold the boundary, and we'll say yes when we want to, and we'll say no when we need to. And we'll get there. You get there. You do get there. But if you find it is an issue for you, I do recommend that you do talk to somebody. So that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. As I said, thank you for watching those watching replay at any time. And again, at any time, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. I'll see you all again next week, and thanks for watching.